Welcome everybody to the Resident Family Support Council that is sponsored by the Illinois State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. I'm Lee Moriarty, and I'm the Deputy State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. We host these meetings on the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month and through Zoom. So if you're interested in getting any further information on how to join these meetings, please feel free to email me. My email address we will put into the chat, but it is my first and last name, which is just Lee, L-E-E .Moriarty, M-O-R-I-A-R-T-Y @illinois.gov. Again, that's Lee, L-E-E .M-O-R-I-A-R-T-Y @illinois.gov. You can feel free to email me about any questions or anything. I just did go through that information verbally because when you watch YouTube, people don't get access to the chat. So this way, then anybody who's watching the YouTube can always feel free to reach out to us, be able to get on our list to be able to be a part of these meetings in real time instead of watching them via video. So today we've got a really, really timely topic about voting. And we've got Laura. Laura Williams is with the Center for Vulnerable Voters, and she's a licensed occupational therapist, and she's going to be talking with us today about having our right to vote. Laura, could you just first share with us about your organization and what your organization is all about?
Yes. Can everybody hear me okay first?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Are you ready for me to share the screen or not yet?
Yeah, you can share the screen if you'd like.
So let me go ahead and see if I can do that.
Okay.
It's always fun.
Yes, it is. Trying to figure this out. If everybody can make sure you're muted, that would be very helpful, please. Thank you.
All right.
Button, and the mute button is you should find at the bottom of your page, typically, or on the top of your page, depending on where your controls are, and it's the microphone button. If you just click on that, that will mute you. Okay, go ahead, Laura.
All right. Can everybody see that page? Should be full screen.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So yes, my name is Laura Williams, and I've been an occupational therapist for about 25 years. And I thought somebody was saying yay OT. I was like, yay.
Of course.
So I've been an occupational therapist for about 25 years.
We've got a lot of background. If people can or they mute.
I can wait a minute.
I'll mute if they can't. I'll mute them if they have difficulties. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start over. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been an occupational therapist for about 25 years with a focus and a passion for seniors. I've worked in a variety of settings, long-term care, our nursing home, home health. I currently work part-time at an assisted living facility and a memory care unit.
Sorry, excuse this. Usually don't have this. If you could please make sure you're muted. We want to make sure that everybody can hear this fully. I'm seeing that some people, you could please make sure. It sounds like we've got a long-term care community that might have joined us, and they may be not muted. I'm looking to see if I can find that entity. But if you could please make sure, there we go. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine. You're fine. So my occupational therapy career led me to the Center for Vulnerable Voters, and I've joined their advocacy group in March as their national training coordinator. And the next slide here, that advanced for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure the slides are up and going. So the Center for Vulnerable Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to advocating for all vulnerable voters. So there's 5 areas we focus on. We enable vulnerable voter constituencies to protect their vote and exercise their civic right to participate in the election process. We train and educate citizens to actively participate in protecting both the voter and their vote. We ensure all types of election officials understand how to protect the integrity of all votes. We train and educate residential facilities, skilled nursing facilities, any type of community residential facility on how to protect the voting rights of their most vulnerable voters. And then we educate the general public on the legal ramifications of violating those residents' rights. So who are vulnerable voters? So we have military voters, especially those serving overseas, folks that are homeless, people with disabilities, seniors, and anybody residing in any type of community living environment. So today I'm going to focus more on the first 5 residential constituencies listed in the slide. However, this information is applicable to all voters aging in place in their homes, especially those that have outside assistance coming in to help them. As I go through the presentation, it's important to have these basic voting rights in the back of your mind. This form is titled Senior Citizens Bill of Rights. However, it applies to everyone, applies to all of us. So, and this flyer is available on our website to share with the residents or to post at your residential community.
Did you share this with us, Laura? Was this one of the documents that you shared with me?
I don't think this is one, but I can definitely send that over.
Yeah, if you send it to me, because this is something that the ombudsman may want to have as they're going around as well to the different long-term care communities. So that would be fantastic.
I will definitely do that. I write myself a note right there, right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the first one is the right to vote or to not vote. That choice is yours and yours alone. The right to refuse assistance from unknown person or persons that you don't want help from. The right to privacy. No one has the right to ask you about your personal and private voting preferences or make a voting suggestion. Voting is strictly confidential. The right to redress. If you believe your rights have been violated, you have a right to report this to your local election official. And the right to have candidates visit. So, residential communities. Residential communities are simply more susceptible to being taken advantage of in various situations, and voting is really no different. So as an occupational therapist working in home care, I often made reports of possible financial abuse of my patients. While working in assisted living and long-term care, I've had to intervene several times with durable medical equipment companies trying to sell products to residents that they could not use or they were simply unsafe. Now, obviously, most people, most family members, healthcare providers, caregivers, durable medical equipment suppliers do the right thing. But there's always going to be people in all walks of life with nefarious intentions, and voting is no different. There's 4 key terms that I believe it's important for us to have a basic understanding of before we learn how we can advocate for ourselves, our loved ones, and then the people we serve. So the first term to be aware of is vote suppression. And that's a technique or a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election by discouraging or preventing specific groups of people from voting. The second term is vote coercion or theft, and that's the use of intimidation or fear of reprisal to secure a vote for a specific candidate. And in some cases, the perpetrator may simply complete the ballot without the voter's permission or authorization. So a few examples based on, we receive a lot of calls from family members to report situations, so I wanted to share a couple of them with you. So we had a family member call to report to us that a home care provider had told her dad that they should vote for candidate X. And Dad did not want the daughter to report this to the home care provider's supervisor, as he was afraid to make the home care provider upset. He had told his daughter, the home care provider's here every day helping me, and you're not here every day. The second example is a family member had called to report a physical therapist had told their loved one that anyone that votes for candidate A deserves to have their medication taken away from them. So this is a form of intimidation. When a person is dependent on another for their self-cares, their therapy, getting their medication, or transporting them to and from the grocery store or the doctor's office, when they're put in a situation where they want to please their caregiver or they're fearful of losing that service, that's a form of intimidation or fear, and it's considered vote coercion. The third term is ballot harvesting, and this is the non-secure method of collecting absentee ballots during an election with the intent of dropping them off at the election offices or the polling places. It's legal in some states and it's illegal in other states. In Illinois, it is legal, so ballot harvesting is legal in Illinois, and we do advocate for residential facilities to safeguard their residents' ballot by implementing a chain of custody procedures of that ballot from the time it enters the building till the time it's mailed or delivered to the election authority. And the last term is ballot trafficking. It's the illegal collection or submission of election ballots. And I'll share an example of this. Right before Christmas, I was in line at the post office, and the lady in front of me was asking the postmaster about change of address. And since I'm moving, so I was eavesdropping, and the postmaster told the lady that there's a new procedure. So he explained it to her as you fill out a change of address request and submit it as prior. But the new step is the post office will mail a letter to the new address, and the person that recently moved must return to the post office with the letter and a photo ID within 2 weeks. If they do not return within 2 weeks, their change of address request will be canceled. So when it was my turn in line, I asked the postmaster, why this new process? And he stated that there was reports of people going to vote on election day only to be turned away because they were told that they had already voted. So it was discovered that nefarious individuals were submitting change of address requests on unsuspecting people, requesting the mail-in ballot in that person's name, and then voting for that person. So that's an example of ballot trafficking. So what would make a residential community vulnerable? So a couple things is there staff training on these four key terms? Does the staff know how to protect a resident's absentee ballot? Does the staff know it's not okay to tell a resident who to vote for? Is there adequate management oversight? Is management aware of federal and their specific state voting laws? Is there monitored systems in place, again, to protect that ballot chain of custody while it's in their building? Is management protecting their staff from outside groups that offer compensation for ballot trafficking? Is management aware of the intent of outside groups that are coming into their residential communities? And then does the facility know which residents are non-compos mentis, and are they ensuring that voting policies are followed for these individuals? because a resident that is unable to express they wish to vote in an election or are unable to express their preferred candidate should never have a request for a ballot or a ballot marked for them. So what can we do? What can we do as family members, as staff members, as a friend? How can we advocate for our loved ones? So simply getting the conversation started is important. So visiting with your loved ones, situational awareness is crucial. We want to ask them questions. Has anyone spoken to them about voting? Have they requested a ballot? Are they aware of political candidates? Has anyone offered to change their voter registration, or has anyone offered to fill out an application for them? Has anyone tried to coerce or bribe a family member in a certain way? We want to be sure and educate our residents and loved ones on, we call it stranger danger, that they should never let strangers tamper with their ballots or impede their free choices. If someone tries to do this, they should, tell a trusted family member or a trusted person.
Laura, a question just came up in the
Oh,
chat.
in the chat, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm monitoring that, so that's okay. Which is a really important question. Can individuals who have a court-appointed guardian vote?
That is a very good question, and I will be addressing that because that is one of the common questions I get. So I will
Good.
definitely
Okay.
be covering that.
Good, thank you.
So in a few slides. Very good question. Thank you for pointing that out because I don't see the chat box on mine. So if anybody has bring that
Don't
up to my
worry about
attention
it.
again.
Yeah, I'll monitor that. Don't
Thank
worry.
you. We want to be sure, and if a loved one requests assistance with marking a ballot, we want to be sure as a family member that we're there to help them. Or we want to utilize on-site polling, and I'm going to go over that a little bit later. As family members or friends, we can ask the facility director what safeguards they have in place to protect both your loved one and their vote. We can request, as a family member or friend, we can request to be notified if our loved one is planning on voting in person. Is the residential community going to have an activity and take the residents to the polling place? Will they be receiving an absentee ballot? And if they're going to receive an absentee ballot, family or friends can ask to be notified when that absentee ballot is received. A nice thing that Illinois has is the county clerks. The county clerks are in charge of the county elections, and they are required by state law to publicize the dates of absentee ballot requests, when that ballot was mailed, and when that ballot was returned. So that's one way that if you yourself vote by mail, you can track that. But also if your loved one is going to vote by mail, or if you just want to see if they requested a ballot, that is public knowledge, and you can access that through your county clerk's office. Some county clerks have that on their website, and others have it posted in their office. So you would have to give them a call and see which way they publicize that information.
There's another question in the chat that says, what if a staff insists on taking ballots from residents to mail? How do they know it was mailed?
If the staff takes the ballot, is that what you said?
Yeah, so the staff takes the ballot, the resident votes, the staff take the ballot, they say, I'll mail it for you. And then the resident doesn't quite know if it ever got mailed or it didn't get mailed. They had to trust that staff member to do it.
Mm-hmm. So
you can to find out if your vote actually happened, if your vote was counted.
So what you can do is you can use that public that public website, that public information at the county clerk's office, or you could even pick up the phone and call the county clerk and say, hey, I want to track my ballot. I want to make sure it was received. Here's my name and number. Can you call me when you receive it? Or I'm going to call every couple days and make sure that it was received.
Can that be
That's,
done post-election and when the polls are closed, or can that only be done up until the polls are closed?
that can be done. They will start mailing out absentee ballots. Oh, let's see, in Illinois, I think it's coming up. Oh no, they've already started mailing absentee ballots. So you can, as soon as you mail out that ballot, as soon as you fill out your ballot, your marked ballot, and return it to the county clerk's office, I would, a couple days later, I would pick up the phone and call them and double check that they received your ballot.
And the
And
question was basically asked, what if staff insists on taking it? And as an ombudsman, my response for that would be that if somebody's insisting on something, you have the right not to. Your voice is still a voice. You could say, no, I would
Yes.
like to put it in a mailbox myself.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I would, if you feel uncomfortable and you are with a situation, you have every right to take your ballot and put it right in the mailbox yourself. I know there's a couple facilities around in my county that they actually take the residents on the bus to the drop box, which is right outside our county clerk's office. And the residents that are able to get off the bus go and actually place the ballot in the drop box. And then the other residents that aren't able, they physically watch the person put the ballot in the drop box.
What a great idea. That's a good idea.
So,
That
yeah.
you know that it happened and you feel empowered that you made your vote.
But I would encourage everybody to use that that public site as a tracking tool to make sure that, yes, they received my request, because they document when they received your request, when they mailed out your ballot. So if you, let's say, you look on the website and it says, oh, they mailed out my ballot on the 10th and it's the 20th and I still haven't got it, I would be picking up the phone and calling the election authority and saying, hey, where's my absentee ballot? It looks like you mailed it on the 10th and it's 10 days later and I still haven't received it.
And just to make sure I heard you properly with that, and that's it changes from county to county, really, if it's going to be on their website or posted internally in their county clerk's office.
Correct. So it depends on the county. My county posts it on the website, but the neighboring county that's much smaller, they post it in-house. So,
but if you
at their
call,
office.
they can give you that information.
But
As
you
a
would,
fair
yeah,
resident, you may not be able to get out. So
absolutely. You
just
call. Yep. You can absolutely call them and just ask them, and they can get on the computer and look that up right away for you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for notifying me about the chats.
Now, there is another question in the chat.
Okay.
Can voters from a residential long-term care facility get a voting poll person and set, sorry, another question popped up, and set into vote in the facility, email for public site? I think what the question is being asked, can the election actually happen? Can they have a polling person come into the nursing home to have the votes taken care of there?
Yes. Yep. And I'm going to go over that a little bit later. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you said there was another question?
Yes, there was. So this is at my dad's memory care. They stapled the residents' voter registration cards to a mail-in ballot application, and the activity director was going room to room asking if they wanted help filling out the application. My dad is so cognitively impaired, he can't even sign his name. The activity director gave me his voter registration and application, and I shredded it.
Yeah.
So yes, they're saying he doesn't have the ability to be able to vote. So she just took it to make sure no one did anything awry with it. And she just shredded it to make sure it didn't get.
So he is still likely registered to vote. So I would just, encourage you to, check maybe every once in a while, just maybe check that absentee ballot list to make sure that, you know, he hasn't received a ballot. The only way you could cancel, you can always cancel your voter registration. However, a person needs to be aware that they're canceling their voter registration. So the way you cancel your voter registration, you simply write, you know, I want to cancel my voter's registration. You don't have to give a reason. You print your name and sign it. I've had family members ask if they should do that, and I said, well, your loved one needs to realize what they're doing. I'm not advocating, you know, doing something for someone if they don't understand what they're doing. And that's, you know, that's because he will stay a registered voter until he cancels his voter registration himself.
And even if you're the POA, because that's what came up in the chat here, that this individual is the resident's power of attorney. And so they take it upon themselves as that power of attorney to do that, since his voice is not able to be actively listened to right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to cover that a little bit later with the guardianship, which I know POA and guardianship are a little bit different.
Yeah,
yeah, I'll cover that a little bit later. And if I don't answer the question, just stick it back in the chat. So, okay. So all official election mail will have this logo on their envelope. So third-party organizations may mail absentee ballot request forms to anyone with the intent of that form being mailed to the election authorities. This is legal. They can do that. Any organization can send you a absentee ballot request form, and on the bottom of that form, it's they normally have it sent into the county clerk's office. I still advocate for using forms, official forms, only from your local county clerk's office. And the way you'll be able to tell that is they will have that official election mail logo on the envelope. I've told several of my patients that I recommend anything election related that comes in the mail that doesn't have the official election mail logo on it, toss it in the garbage. Just pay attention to the information from your county clerk's office only. So what are the facility or residential community director's responsibilities? So being aware of and educating and training staff on state and federal election laws, enacting protocols to protect residents and their ballots, and protecting residents from outside organizations that are volunteering to come in and help residents fill out ballots and applications. We believe that facility directors should be teaching staff that it's never okay to tell a resident who to vote for. They should know which residents are non-compos mentis and ensure that those individuals have an extra layer of protection. And keeping family informed of their loved one's intent to vote or not to vote. We do have a residential facility and skilled nursing home staff training guide. It's titled Their Vote Matters. And this was developed with input from healthcare providers after we received several calls from staff members requesting more information and training regarding what they can and can't do with assisting their residents with the voting process. So, and that's a free guide that can be downloaded and shared with your directors of your loved one's residential facility.
If someone working in the behind the scenes can get that and put that link into the chat, that would be great. We've got some people working behind the scenes all the time that are doing
Oh, great.
Yeah, that always work it. So Donna, we'll see if we can get that put in there for you. And there was another question. Should and can memory care residents have their voter registration canceled if they don't realize what's going on? And if not, how can they be protected from having use of their vote used by others? If a resident has only a public guardian, should they cancel their vote? And you said you're going to get into guardian.
Yeah, I'll cover guardianship.
If I could throw in real quick, you mentioned not, teaching staff to not encourage residents to vote one way or the other. I just want to add to that that's going to include, like, if you're going to have a big day where everyone is voting, you should instruct the staff not to wear, like a particular party, their party preference logos on their shirts or whatever. They should be respectful of that and not be promoting with their clothing or things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very good point.
Yes.
Thank you. So there's two common questions I receive quite often from directors. And the first one is, what if someone is considered non-compos mentis? So, and this may go to some of your memory folks, apply to some of your memory care folks. So a resident who cannot respond to their name should not be given a ballot. And residents who cannot either express that they wish to vote in an election or cannot indicate their preferred choice on the ballot should not have a ballot marked for them. The second question I get is guardianship. And how does guardianship affect voting in Illinois? Because each state is different. So per the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission, they said they are not aware of any law regarding a guardian determining the capacity to vote, and they are not aware of any courts removing voting rights. However, a guardian can make the request for, I hate the term ward, but I was copying it exactly, not to participate in the voting process. That would be the same. The guardian can make the request. The POA can make the request. But if the resident expresses intent to vote, they can vote.
That's important for us all to hear, because many times people just feel that the guardian, their voice supersedes anything that the resident says. So that's really important for everybody to be very mindful of, is that if they do request their intent to vote, that they can still vote, even if the guardian says no.
Right. So the commission emphasized that there must be an intent to vote. And so how is this determined? That's the big question. So this next slide from the American Bar Association, I think kind of helps answer that question. I'm going to read it. So being able to communicate a specific desire to participate in the voting process was chosen as the determining criteria because that is the threshold step of voting. The subsequent steps to complete the task of voting are self-determinative of capacity, much like the capacity to ride a bicycle can accurately be determined only by allowing the individual to mount a bike and start pedaling. If the capacity is lacking, the task just won't be completed. Likewise, an individual simply will not be able to make or communicate a choice on a ballot, even with assistance, if the capacity to vote is lacking. The process stops by its own lack of momentum. So for example, let's say I've asked my grandma, do you want to vote in the primary election? And she says yes. And she has requested me to help her fill out her ballot request. And she's able to request that. And I'm able to help her because she either has a disability, she has a visual deficit, or she has a language barrier. So I'm helping her fill out her absentee ballot request. And I'm asking her, do you want a Democrat or Republican ballot? If my grandma can't choose, my process stops right there. So let's say my grandma picked a party and the request for the ballot was mailed and now it's returned back to her. And she has requested my assistance again to help mark the ballot. And so I'm going to ask her, do you want to vote for Abraham Lincoln or George Washington? If she's unable to answer that question, I'm leaving it blank and I'm moving on to the next question. So if the voter is unable to choose any candidates, I'm going to take my permanent marker. I'm going to write across the entire ballot, unable to vote, and I'm going to submit that ballot as instructed. So obviously it's not going to be counted.
I'm curious, what if the person wanted to do this, let's say that language barrier piece, and they wanted to do it in person. So they wanted to go to the poll on the polling date. And so but they need assistance because they can't read or they don't speak the language, or they may have even some dementia where the words just get jumbled for them. So while they're decisional, they still can't be able to do it independently. Can they designate a person to help them, or is it one of the judges that comes to help them? How does that work?
They can designate a person to assist them, or they can have the judges help them. If they have the judges, it'll be one from each political party will be assisting them.
Got it. Okay.
So they just have to have a disability, a visual deficit, or a language barrier in order to request the assistance.
There's another question that came up. Are facilities obligated to take residents to the polls if they want to go?
I wouldn't, that's a good question. I wouldn't think they're obligated because they can get an absentee ballot. I would think that would be a great outing for the residents. I think the facility would be doing a disservice to the residents by not taking them to the polls if that's what they request.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're required to.
Yeah, there's issues. Sometimes not every building has a van or something to be able to take people. I have heard of buildings before where they're like, okay, we're going to rent a van for the day because we want to make sure that our residents still feel they have that opportunity to be able to get out and vote today.
Yeah. Well, and this is the generation that takes a lot of pride in voting and going, to the polling place and participating in the process. So I would hate to see that, that process taken away from anybody, or that experience taken away from anybody.
So if I could jump in again, if transportation is the issue, my recommendation would be to ask the resident which party they are affiliated with, and then call that party, because a lot of times they want to drive people to the polls, and they'll go out of their way to try and help people. So transportation to the polls should not be an issue.
Sometimes even your precinct committeemen will help out with that too. And either party precinct committeemen should really be helping out with that because they represent their whole precinct. But
so that may be worth a conversation with the precinct committeemen even beforehand and see if they have opportunity to be able to get something, borrow a church van or something like that, even where they can come and get. So remember that as well. Those that could help facilitate that happening in long-term care communities.
Okay, for residential communities, I'm going to go over the 4 basic voting options. There are other options that are rarely used, like hospitalization voting, where the election authority delivers the ballot to the hospital. And then there's also electronic accessible voting, in which the ballot is emailed and the voter uses their modified accessible computer to read and mark the ballot. I haven't had too much experience with too many people having that type of accessibility to modify their computers, but I'm sure there are. But so we have vote in person early at the polling place. So they're going to go to the polling place before election day, voting in person on election day at the polling place, vote by absentee or mail-in ballot, and then vote in person at their residential community polling place, which would need to be a licensed care facility in Illinois. So I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper to each one of these. So in-person polling place, either early or election day voting. These polling places are designed to safeguard your vote. They provide trained election authorities who ensure procedures are followed. They can answer questions accurately. They provide election authorities of each political party for checks and balances. They can provide the voter with appropriate assistance and ensure the privacy of the vote. They allow poll watchers to observe the process and ensure that these procedures are followed. And then there's that proper chain of custody of the marked ballot.
To clarify that, then, if we could, that in person, that would mean, when you said facility, did they mean at the long-term care place, or are you talking about the place where everybody goes to vote, like the Park District building, or, you know,
where everybody goes to vote.
Okay.
So hops in their car and drives to the polling place.
Got
So the
it.
standard
way
polling place.
Got it.
So the in-person polling place by federal and state laws are to be handicapped accessible. So 75 years age or older or disabled can move to the front of the line. In Illinois, there's curbside voting. So that's something that needs to be arranged ahead of time with your county clerk. But that would be, you pick up the phone, call the county clerk. Hey, I want to arrange curbside voting. I'm going to go to polling place A, and I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock. And you pull up to the curb, and 2 election authorities, one from each political party, come out, and you do curbside voting in your car. They should have wheelchair accessible booths, and then they should have assistive devices like large ballot viewers, audio ballots, and then of course you can also request the assist from the election judges. So the second common voting option is the absentee or mail-in ballots, and that's when a resident or a individual requests the absentee ballot. It's mailed to the residential community or their home. They fill out the ballot, and it's returned either mail or delivered to the election authority by the voter or another person of the voters at the voter's request. This last option is in-person voting at the residential communities. And this is with 2 election judges, one from each political party. They will arrive at a scheduled time. They will set up a polling place. And this also provides the residents with the same safeguards as the standard polling places. So again, ensuring procedures are followed, questions are answered correctly, provide the voter with the appropriate assistance if the voter requests it, ensure the privacy of the vote, and follows the proper chain of custody for that ballot. So that means the election judges will bring the ballots with them. The residents will mark their ballots. The election judges will secure the marked ballots and then return them to the election office for to be counted on election day.
Now, I know back in the day, I've been doing this work for a very long time, is that many of the long-term care communities became polling places for the community at large. And so they were using that. It's like I go to a Park District for my voting. So they would act like that, and it would be at the building, and they'd have that was the polling place for that neighborhood or that. I don't, is that still happening? It seems like that is not happening anymore.
That's kind of, no, it's not happening. It's not happening to my knowledge.
Yeah, COVID, COVID did that to people. Yeah, but I always know as a person, just being in the buildings on those days, it was such an exciting day for the residents. They loved having visitors coming in and
watching watching the
it felt like such a
process.
great normal day for them. Yeah, they really enjoyed
Yeah.
that. Just
Yeah.
curious if that could still happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be awesome if that could still happen.
Yeah.
But they do
Yeah,
have,
COVID pretty well. I was gonna say COVID pretty well killed all of that, and I've been involved with some of the elections here locally, and there's a lot of things a lot of boxes they have to check in order to designate something as a polling place. And if an outbreak happens again, they don't want to they don't want to have to scramble and find another polling place. So it's unfortunate.
yeah. So there was a few communities or a few counties that did do they had residential in-person voting in their community during the outbreak, and they got really creative. They one facility down south in southern Illinois, they had it outside. And another polling place or another facility, they just set up a separate room. And of course, everybody was masked. And so there was a few facilities that still, or a few counties that still provided that to the residential facilities that wanted it. So this is from the Illinois State Board of Elections calendar regarding the deadline for licensed residential communities to request on-site in-person polling place for their facility. So the deadline to request that is February 20th. So, and the Illinois State Board Elections has mentioned to me, because I knew I was doing this presentation, that they recommend requesting this sooner than later. And this is for all licensed care facilities. So your group homes, your VAs, your nursing homes, and some of your continued care communities.
And that's one of the reasons why when Laura and I were engaging in conversation about having this meeting happening, she's like, the sooner in January, the better, because there's certain things that the clock is ticking on. And we want to make sure that everybody's very mindful of the dates for this thing. So thank you for that, Laura, for being mindful of these dates for everybody.
So, and what happens with residential community voting is the election authorities will set up a time to come to the community the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday immediately before the election. So that's for this coming election, that'll be March 15th through the 18th. And so what are the residential communities' responsibilities to get for residential community voting? They simply need to make the request for in-person voting at their residential community by February 20th. And then they need to provide a place to set up the polling place. So the election authorities have a place to set up. So as a family member or a friend of a loved one in a community or even an advocate, I think it's important to remember or to remind the facility directors of this service and the deadlines. The directors have a lot of responsibility and are probably not thinking about elections a month ahead of time. So I would politely mention this service to them and discuss the benefits to the residents, how it helps keep staff from even being in an awkward situation with maybe having to help a resident fill out a ballot if they don't have a family member. And you can also help the residential directors locate the contact information for the local county clerk. And that information is on that handout that I believe is on the website. And this is just a nice informational flyer from Illinois State Board of Elections. It just provides an overview of healthcare voting. It might be something to share with the residential facility directors. And of course, we always recommend any concerns that you have, report them to your ombudsman or your local sheriff or your local county clerk. Talk to your residential director. You can call our hotline or you can email me. Just the important thing is just be sure and follow up. And I want to emphasize that election laws are always always changing. So be sure and try and, keep up to date by checking your local county clerk's website first, or your Illinois State Board of Elections, or pick up the phone and call your county clerk. That's what they're there for. They're a public servant to answer the communities and the public's questions. I also want to mention that I send out reminders, helpful links, and deadline information to residential community directors. If that is something you would like, that maybe your facility would like, or if you would like to be added to the Illinois list, just shoot me the name of the director and the email, and I will add them to the Illinois reminder list. And that is something I send out before each election, and that's per resident community director's request. They have specifically asked, hey, can you somehow send us a reminder of these deadlines that are happening, a month or 6 weeks in some other states before election day, because they're often missing those deadlines with all their other duties they have. So oh, it looks like there's a lot of chat. Any questions, concern, or comments?
Yeah, so Laura, so if people did want, could they email you directly to get those reminders? Because I do know we've got a couple of people that are on this call today that actually have a very good connectivity to some of the long-term care communities.
Yes.
There's some of our trade associations. So if they could get that information out, that could be very, very helpful, because I have seen activity directors who typically take on this role get themselves into a quandary, because they're like, oh, geez, this is happening. And I missed this date, I missed that date. And because it is a lot to keep track of when you've got the holidays coming up and then post holidays, and they're in the middle of all that, and it gets really mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I work in a couple of facilities in Iowa, and I'm sure it's the same in Illinois. Staff shortages. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, they need help. They need some reminders and some gentle reminders, and they do appreciate it, the people that I'm contacting. So
yeah, and so if you give me even that information, I can put it into our Monday memo. If you give me your permission, I'll put your contact information so that the ombudsman also, since we do go around to all the long-term care communities in the state, we can give that out and tell them that that's something that's an opportunity for them to be able to stay on board with any of that.
Oh, so yes. Yep. You can share my information, and I can get you just shoot me an email, Lee, with what you need and what you want for, and I will get it to you. And I've dropped my email in the link too, if anybody had. I'm trying to look at the questions here too.
Yeah, I think I've been asking most of them for you. One of the questions that comes to my mind as well is, for a person who may be in the hospital and now they're transitioning to a rehab, to a short stay nursing home stay, and they're not going to be back home in time to do their election, to be able to do that properly, but they weren't planning on this, so they didn't have a lot of those dates to get this stuff done. What are their options to make sure that their vote can still be counted?
So they would fall underneath the one of the rarely used, which the hospitalized voter, or which also there's a time frame in there, but that also includes transitional care, if like they're in skilled nursing therapy at a facility. Yep. Yeah. So they would definitely yes, they can definitely vote. Absolutely. They will have pick up the phone, call their county clerk, and find out if they can mail that, or the county clerk is required to deliver that ballot to them.
Again, that's really great information for long-term care communities to hear, because and for us as residents and families and ombudsmen and other entities who work in the aging network to be able to help impart that information, because those are people don't plan for that catastrophic event, and then they feel like they lost their opportunity to vote. And our vote is very important, especially for many people. It's very important. Yeah. So
I can send you that informational flyer too, if you wanted to put that up. It's just a 1-page on hospitalized voting and your rights.
Thank you. Yep. That would be really, really fantastic to have that. This has been a really great conversation. I know I have learned a lot. I don't know if there's any other questions that came through.
We have one more question. Will you be posting your PowerPoint?
Oh, that's a good, and I've never been asked that before.
If you'd like to, if Laura, if you're okay with it, I can make sure,
That's-
if you want to send it to me and we'll
Yes.
put it. We
Yep.
did all the resources that Laura has sent me. I already have posted onto the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's page under the Resident Family Support Council for today's meeting. So you can access all those resources there. And then, as I said, we do record these. So we'll be on YouTube. So push that information forward for anybody to go ahead and listen to this, because it has been very, very helpful to have this, this information today. And it does look like there may have been, how does this apply to long-term care that are both independent living and assisted in the
Hey,
building?
Lee
Yes.
and Laura, before you get into this question, because it could take a little bit or it could take no time at all, but Lee, we're at the hour. Could you plug our next meeting?
Absolutely. Yes. Stephen has to keep me on track for doing that because I get carried away with the current conversation. So our next meeting is actually going to be on January 23rd. Again, we're always at 3:00, same link that brought you here. We'll bring you to that meeting. And the topic of that meeting is we're going to be talking about Area Agency on Aging. We hear about this entity. What is it really all about? What services do they offer? So that we can all make sure that we are doing the best that we can using all the resources that are out there. So we'll be talking about that next meeting on January 23rd. Now that back to that question. Thanks, Stephen. Does it make a difference, any of this, with independent living and assisted living in the same building, or is it the same procedures?
It's the same procedure. They just need to be a licensed care facility.
So if they're independent living,
If they're strictly they have to be a licensed care facility in the state of Illinois.
so
if the long-term care, if I'm reading that right, the long-term care that has both independent and assisted living in the same building, then the long-term care would, I mean, most of your long-term cares are, I think all your long-term cares are licensed in the state of Illinois, and they would qualify. So then I'll double check. Julie, if you want to drop your email in the chat, I'm going to research that and see if the independent living residents and the assisted living residents can take advantage of that polling place. I believe they can in Illinois. I just need to research that because each state's, I don't want to get my states mixed up.
Okay. And Laura, you did put your email in the chat, but you sent it only to me. Can I send it off to everybody?
Oh, send it out to everybody. Yes, I'm sorry.
Got it. Yeah, because I communicated with you privately at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
So that's how come that happened. So I just went ahead and I put Laura's email address into the chat for everybody as well.
Great. And Julie, I just got yours, so I will look that up. I just don't want to give you, I get sometimes those questions that get me into the weeds, I need to look up because each state's a little bit different. I don't want to get my states mixed up. So.
And what a great resource your organization has been, and the information you shared today has been very, very valuable for all of us. I learned a lot today. So Laura, I do want to thank you. We're going to go ahead and I will end the meeting now. And so thank you. I just want to again publicly thank you.